It is April 4th, 2024, and we're here with Kitty Stalsburg talking about high hopes at 50. So we have a bunch of questions for you, Kitty. I might start with this first one, which is, how did you first come to High Hopes? What made you want to join that community?
Well, Liz, it was your mom. It was all your mom, just like so many other people. But as you know, I had a relationship with your mom, and we were looking for a place to live. My husband and I were going to get married, and she said, yeah, I might have that, but I have something else I think you might be interested in. And so she brought me to a horse show that Elsie Vera was having in Old Lyme at the old Cricklewood Farms. And that was it. And your mom, my life mentor for everything that I ever did in this field, is your mom. And with her help and support, I started as a volunteer, then became a part-time instructor, got involved in the National Association. At that time, it was called NARA, and now it's PATH. Went on to, after my certification, then became a barn manager for Elsie Vera. And then by the time we got to our own facility, actually before then, I was a part-time program director. We got to our own facility. I was full-time program director for 17 years and then full-time executive director for another 17.
Wow.
Yeah. Thanks, Judy.
I'm going to jump down. So 37 years of High Hopes is 50 years. What have you seen over that time?
So much. When I started as a volunteer, we were, of course, nomadic. And I wasn't in any way, shape, or form in the very early days, not like Johnny or Holly or, your mom. By that time, we actually had a number of horses. We did move a couple of times when I first started, but it was a smaller program, maybe a half dozen horses. We were still borrowing a lot of horses. Some horses would be trucked in. But then, as we morphed and grew within the next 5 years and got to the current facility, change was just exponential. Growth and the opportunities were massive because we first started out, we actually thought we'd have we'd be able to support our services by having a boarding operation as well, like a for-profit end of things. And we quickly outgrew that. We quickly outgrew the space that we thought was palatial. And all of a sudden we were like, wow. So I think having our own home made a big, big difference to the community, to accessibility. And, I think one of the things that we were always able to do was be very flexible to the need in the community. So having our own place, we saw greater need and people became more aware of us. Certainly, we started as an educational-based program going into Essex Elementary School. And then when we had our own facility, now we could bring schools to us and other groups to us. And, that just allowed for so many other. And interestingly, over time, we started educationally based, and then we morphed into more working with individuals with more physical needs. And now, of course, and then there was a period, and there still is a pretty high demand for working with individuals who are on the autism spectrum. And now more and more with folks with anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. So definitely see a lot of those changes from, I was thinking in preparation for the interview, after we had our own facility, we realized we needed a broader reach, and we tried several locations. We tried the satellite model, operating a satellite program for 3 years out of Camp Harkness in Waterford. And then trying it also at Lord Creek Farm, where we thought that might be an adjunct program where we could do additional trail riding. And then we even had our little Smokey, our Shetland pony, who used to get in the trailer and do visits in, nursing homes and schools and other outreach. So lots of changes.
What are your earliest memories of High Hopes?
I have a really bizarre early memory with Shirley Ferguson and a participant. And I think I was wearing a bridle on my head, and the participant was holding the reins walking behind me, and Shirley was the sidewalker. I also had the opportunity to work with some of the students from Essex Elementary, but they were now at Kingswood or Crickwood Farms at that point, and we were doing vaulting in the late 80s when vaulting was not mainstream, and Path or NARA at that point really wasn't considering vaulting. Vaulting is gymnastics on horseback. And we were doing carriage driving. So there were so many novel opportunities. And we just had the greatest group of horses, just a wonderful group of horses. And of course, an amazing group of can-do volunteers that were just so receptive to, sure, I'll learn how to do that. Yeah, let's try that. It was a group of people that were really interested in exploring potential.
That's good. And did you know Sis Gould, and what did you learn from her?
I hope that I learned grace from Sis. That I think grace, and she had this incredible way of interacting with people and listening and truly caring and kindness. And I think that's Sis's legacy, in addition, of course, to your mom's. But Sis is a founder, and that speaks to the strength of High Hopes and Elsie Vera. As a founder, it was not about her. It was about getting other people to embrace a similar idea and then being receptive to building consensus and having discussion, something that we could certainly use more of in the world today. But that was the strength. It wasn't, Sis never said, this is how I want it done. Sis would present an idea, allow for discussion. She might work a little bit behind the scenes, but very softly. She might bring a picnic lunch and say, now, could we have a more conversation around such and such topic? But it was with true interest and caring and listening, really great listening skills. But I think also her determination. She believed fully in the work of the horse and the human and their interaction and the unlimited potential for it.
Well, I guess the perfect segue to the next question, which is tell us about the role horses have played in your life.
Horses have always, since the time I was 9, been a part of my life. I've always had horses in my wherever I lived. And fortunately, I've been able to be on this beautiful property where we've had horses almost all the time we've been here. And you've had your horses here, and Elsie Vera had their horses here. So they've always been a part. And I think, my work with horses, whether I was a young competitive rider or an adult trail rider or just somebody who enjoys being around them and caring for them, and certainly it's been my privilege for 37 years to have them engaged in my life and my work. So in both aspects.
And what are the key values that you've seen developed over the years?
I think the single biggest one from High Hopes that I would say encompasses High Hopes is the inclusion. High Hopes is a place of unconditional acceptance. No matter who it is that comes through the door, they are welcomed with a smile. They are there's a discussion around how can we help, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's a participant. That has had peaks and valleys, I would say, through the years, but I think that's something that truly embodies the organization. Leadership, I think there has always been an element, and this was from Sis and your mom, involvement in the national organization. And that, again, speaks to my life mentorship with, Sis was the secretary for the National Association when it was formed. Almost 50 years ago as well. And then your mom went on to become very involved in committees and a chair of the organization. And, I kind of followed in their footsteps. I became involved as committee members. High Hopes always believed in sharing their educational knowledge. And as an older established program in the country, we always welcomed people through the doors. And so that is something that is another part, sharing or teamwork, building a strong team. Some of the best memories I have at High Hopes are working with our physical therapist, Carolyn, with riders. She would be in the physical therapist role. We'd have the horse doing what the horse does best. I'd be in the instructor role. We'd have a sidewalker. And that truly was the embodiment of what teamwork means. And the ultimate gain is, of course, the participant or their family and their outcomes.
When you just described sort of, you said your favorite memory, but is there like one specific memory that stands out to you as just this moment that as you think back?
Oh, I don't know. There isn't one. There's so many, whether it's, my mother was involved in high hopes. My mother, who was deathly afraid of horses, was involved in high hopes because she supported me and she believed in what we did. I think as a global memory, we used to have a horse show, and it was a single day where we'd have like 80 riders and all the volunteers and families, and we'd have all kinds of everything from face painting. And it was just a very celebratory event with a lot of people in attendance. There's a lot of those at High Hopes when you go through the photos and you realize through the years that there's been so many events. Certainly, I think times with some of our adult riders who've taught me meaning of words that I probably can't say because they might get blooped out. But, having adult conversations with adult participants while they're enjoying themselves. Or, I can vividly remember in my early instructional days, I had a young student who was this vibrant redhead. She was new to riding. I was a new know-it-all instructor, and we had just asked the horse to whoa. I was trying to work on language, and she'd asked the horse to whoa. And now I asked her to ask the horse to walk on. And while she physically could and cognitively could, she was as stubborn as I. So we sat there for about 15 minutes before I realized that really wasn't what we needed to be focused on, and have developed subsequent skills like, okay, we're going to count together 1, 2, 3 and walk on. So, I think those types of aha learning moments. Beyond that, Liz, we've also done so much for instructor training. And I think those are the things that have, I see the ripple effect to our work in training others and sharing that knowledge. And just a week or so ago, I had an email from this gentleman in Caracas who came here probably more than 10 years ago. His son, his wife, and his wife was a show jumper. His son had cerebral palsy. They came for a couple of weeks and stayed at Water's Edge in Westbrook so that she could be involved in our instructor training course. They went back down and have subsequently built a massive center for therapeutic riding that is funded through her show jumping lesson program. And, that type of potential that people see, and the commitment, the amazing commitment. Another couple from Puerto Rico actually have started their own program there, and they've been up to High Hopes several times for some of our training and education. And it's also very fulfilling and amazing when I go to regional and national events, and I see people that have been through the doors and have been trained, or somebody comes up and introduces themselves and say, you probably don't remember me, but I went through a course at High Hopes at one time. So that ripple effect is truly rewarding.
Well, there was a question I wanted to ask you is about, having seen the organization grow into this global leader was really something to see. And do you have any sense of how many practitioners you've trained, where in the world they are, how many individuals can you estimate are riding and learning because of your teams, both human and equine?
It's literally thousands. We've been doing the instructor training course since 1995. And, at times it was 6 or 12 people a year. But they, in turn, went home, whether it was South Korea, Croatia, Bosnia, Germany, Japan, and then all throughout the United States, all over the country. Never, I don't think anybody in Hawaii, but Alaska, indeed. And, they, in turn, have started their own programs or working at programs. And so they're serving the population. So we've often talked about that. How many people is it really? I think we've talked that we've served our country count is about 100, I would say, that have been through the course in different countries or states. And I think those individuals are well over several hundred. And then the individuals that they in turn have been able to serve are thousands.
It must feel kind of amazing to feel like you spawned this worldwide network, basically. And just to think of your 37 years at High Hopes of its 50 years, talking about spanning, a long, a distance, but also time. How does it feel to be such an integral part of this organization that has grown so much on its own, but also you've been there for the vast majority of it?
Yeah, it's been a huge privilege to be able to spend my life in a way that impacts so many people, and to do work that is so meaningful. But also, my personal reward was no 2 days were ever the same. I was able to build a career and continue to grow and continue to develop. It's unusual, very unusual in today's times for somebody to say, yeah, I've been at the same place for 37 years. And I was just fortunate to kind of step into roles at various times and continue to grow and develop. And also an industry that was growing and developing. I think now, I want to look into the future and say this is just something that's going to keep growing. But it's become harder, I think, for therapeutic riding or equine-assisted services in general. We're seeing a shortage of horses. We're seeing a shortage of volunteers. Certainly no shortage of demand for services. But I think overall, I think programs are struggling more and more post-COVID maybe, but maybe other things. I think one of our peers in the field, Lori Renker, has recently talked about struggling of just riding schools in general. People's values have changed. Kids are less apt to spend, hours and days like you and I grew up at the barn. They're on devices or they're not there. So I don't know what the answer will be. There is definitely a change afoot regarding working with and pairing with the horse and that relationship piece, that mindfulness piece. When I think about the various evolutions that have taken place through High Hopes, one of the things that I think the relevance of equine-assisted services needs to be continually built, because I think it is something that people would, it's easy to lose track of a little bit. So one of the things that we tried to do at High Hopes was One Health, where it became about the environment. Therapeutic riding offers a unique environment where it's the people and the animals and the environment, the farm or rural environment. And those three things can change the world.
So to some extent, it's hard to see an evolution while you're in it, just as it's hard to see as a parent to kind of like measure your child's growth, because it just happens. And then suddenly you have this adult. But now that you've had a little time away and space to reflect, what do you see as High Hopes' evolution? Where's it going? What are the opportunities?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. My looking glass is kind of foggy, I would say. And I think for the field in general, I do think that there is a greater demand for, in general, all nonprofits, and certainly within our field, they're not hobbies. They need to be run as businesses and functional businesses. So, years and years ago, I can remember doing workshops and telling the participants, you have to charge for your services. And I think that's something that our field needs to continue to do. We have to build value and an understanding of the value. What are people getting? We have to be better about articulating our outcomes. If you participate in our services, this will happen. And we have to let people know that that's really happening and that change is happening because of the human-animal, human-horse, equine interaction. And I think that's making us become more professional as a field, as an industry, both how we run our businesses and how we deliver our services. So quality assurance, I think, is a big thing. It's something that High Hopes has always put first and foremost through our accreditation processes, our participation in the National Association, as well as our certification of all of our staff. And because we were training and education, we always stayed kind of on the cutting edge of things. And I hope that that's something that High Hopes will continue to be able to pursue, staying innovative, staying flexible, meeting the changing demographic needs. I think the greater increasing accessibility. It's a little hard. One of our challenges is that we are in a in a limited rural area. But we know that there's so much need in New Haven and New London and surrounding communities. So if we can bring that population and share the beauty of the facility and the horses with a larger population that might not otherwise have that opportunity.
So after all this time, what do you think is so special about the horse and human connection?
Well, so much. But I do believe last night I sat and watched the documentary on Snowman. And, here's the story of this crazy Dutchman who finds this amazing draft horse who's on his way to the kill pens back in the 50s. And he rescues him for $80 and he becomes twice a world champion in show jumping. And this horse did it because of his relationship with this man. And I think the horse has unlimited ability and capability to love. Let's put some human emotions around. There was a time in my career where I'd say, well, no, we can't put human emotions to the horse. But I don't believe that anymore. I think that there is truly a connection. Probably the single biggest thing, and we're hearing about it more and more. But I think that it's the horse requires a mindfulness. As a horse person, you have to be present in the moment. Your head can't be 50 miles away or 10 feet away. Your head has to be in that space, in that time when you're on the ground, whether you're with the horse. And the horse, they do things like heart math, where the horse heartbeat and the human heartbeat, or just simply looking at that horse's eye. And in general, the horse's behavior lends itself to being present in the moment with the horse and understanding the horse. So, but I also think that shared understanding, that acceptance, the horse doesn't care who you are, as long as you treat that horse with dignity and respect and kindness. And if that horse can teach us that reciprocally, and we can teach that to someone else, again, better place.
Great answer. Just a question about over the years, who are the staff, participants, volunteers, and horses?
So many. Having just spent some time in our historical photo library, we've had just amazing horses. Some who are still there today. Many people will recognize Petra. She's the Norwegian fjord that I call her gold. She has just been this overwhelmingly amazing, tolerant horse. And she never batted an eye. She came in as a young horse, went to work, and has still Teddy, our Morgan gelding, who's been there forever. He was a Yukon bred Morgan. He's received some national awards. We've also had some upper level Grand Prix dressage horse Touchstone. While I don't know that he was truly ever a therapy horse, he did help us to engage and appreciate equine movement differently. Cody, another wonderful quarter horse gelding. Jaranita, of course, has a near and dear spot in my heart. A little Lipizzan mare that was gifted to, well, you. She was gifted to a therapeutic riding. She's got the most amazing story. Gifted to a therapeutic riding program in Long Island. You and your husband bid on her, supported her for a number of years while she was trained. And then she eventually came to High Hopes, where she spent her entire life in service and then retired back here on this farm. So Romy, another good example of a horse that, your mom always liked to say this, when she was in program, her head was always in program, well behaved. I'm going to do my job. Take her on a trail ride, and she'd have a buck and a little vinegar in her stride. Apache, he would play pony club games one day and just let himself be touted around and painted, and so I think each horse, and I could go. We have a chart in the barn of every single horse that's come through the doors. Some horses truly love it, truly love it, and they stay for a long time. Other horses might last for, 2 to 5 years and then say, that's it, I'm done. Thank you very much. But we've definitely had a number. And clearly I consider the horse as the foundation for what we do. We've also, similarly with staff and volunteers, there are still staff today that remain connected Carolyn Jagelski, Holly Ridgway, that have been there for years. There's other staff like Susan Schulman who have started as interns, became staff, then became volunteers, or Landon, Landon as a participant first, and then she came back as an intern. She was a staff member, and now she's on the board. So there is something that compels people. And I think one of the greatest things we could do in our 50th is to have a reunion, not only of our instructor training course, but volunteers and staff. Many staff through the years have been involved in a lot of different capacities and many different ways. Volunteers, we've had some volunteers that have been there for 20 years or more, and some of those are being highlighted now in our 50th. So, yeah,
it's amazing. Is there any question that I should ask me that we?
No, I think that was David. Did we miss anything?
I don't think so.
I think you got it.
Your closing thoughts, though. Right?
Closing
thoughts, yes.
The 50 years is a mile mark. It's a true mile mark in this field for an organization that started with, just a couple of people and a couple of horses and was nomadic. And High Hopes has a great deal to be proud of in terms of all of the individuals served in the 50 years, the amazing care for the herd, the impact on the volunteers. That's something that, Shirley has talked about and we've heard about through interviews. But I think we truly haven't recognized the impact that organization like High Hopes has had on volunteers. And the volunteers that come through the doors, they don't come because of, certainly, they're not being paid. Hopefully they're getting verbal thanks and acknowledgement. They're not getting little tchotchkes. They come because when they leave, I've had so many volunteers say to me, I feel so much better when I leave. It brightens my day. I look forward to this all week long. But for many of our younger volunteers, it is career changing. It is life changing. Their interaction with staff or horses has defined their patterns, their career. They've gone off to become physical therapists, occupational therapists, special education teachers. They've gone in the equine field. They've gone on to become certified therapeutic riding instructors. And, some of them have come back. Some of them have come back and worked at High Hopes for periods of time. One of our wonderful volunteers, a young woman named Harper, she has gone off to get a master's in public health. And, she was a rider, and she recognized, many competition riders recognize the unique bond between the horse and them and, want to share that. So I think the impact on the volunteers is probably something that we under realize. So, yeah, I would say, I think in general, High Hopes has been a wonderful organization within the community. We have had amazing leadership in the past and an amazing group of trustees and board members that have helped to envision a potential future and been supportive of staff in their various roles and allowed the staff to do their job and supported them at the necessary governance levels. So hopefully that can continue into the future and continue to have a strong, vibrant organization. Yay, High Hopes.